She found the card in his coat pocket on a Tuesday. It was small, the kind you buy at a grocery store checkout, with a cartoon balloon on the front and just enough space inside for a few words. The handwriting was a child's. Uneven letters pressed hard into the paper the way children write when they want to make sure every word counts. It said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. Love, Jackson and Brianna." She read it once. Then she read it again. Then she stood in the hallway of her own home, the coat still in her hands, and she counted the seconds until she could breathe normally. She counted 6 minutes. She remembered that detail years later with a precision that surprised even her. Not 5 minutes, not 10-6. Because when the world as you know it stops making sense, the mind reaches for anything it can measure. Diana Mercer was 43 years old, a mother of 2, a wife of nearly 10 years, and in the space of reading 12 words written by a child she had never met, everything she believed about her life began to come undone. This is the story of how one woman discovered that the man she married was living 2 complete lives, 2 households, 2 families, 2 sets of children calling him daddy, and how she dismantled the lie with a precision and a quiet that would have made him tremble if he had known it was coming. This is not a story about a woman who fell apart. This is a story about a woman who found out exactly who she was when someone she loved gave her every reason to forget. Before we go any further, ask yourself something. You have been with someone for 10 years. You have built a home together. You have raised children together. You have learned the sound of their breathing when they sleep, the particular way they laugh at something they find genuinely funny, the small rituals they reach for when they are stressed. You believe you know this person. You believe that the intimacy of a decade means that if something were deeply, catastrophically wrong, you would feel it, you would know. Now ask yourself, what if you were wrong? What if the very qualities that made you trust this person, the steadiness, the consistency, the way he always called when he said he would, were not signs of a faithful man, but the practiced habits of someone who had learned, over years, exactly how to maintain 2 separate worlds without either one collapsing? How long had Caleb Mercer been living this double life? Did the other woman know that Diana existed, and when the truth finally came to the surface, not in a dramatic confrontation, not in a moment of tearful confession, but through a birthday card in a coat pocket, what did Diana Mercer do with it? Stay with me, because the answer to that last question is the one that will stay with you long after this video ends. Before we go any further, we would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or your state in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Stories like this one, stories about real women navigating unimaginable betrayal with grace and steel, are exactly what this channel is built for. To understand what Diana lost, you first have to understand what she had built, or believed she had built. Diana Mercer grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the middle child of 3, raised by a mother who worked double shifts at a hospital, and a father who coached Little League on weekends and never missed a school play. She grew up in a house where love was demonstrated through presence, through showing up, through the ordinary, unremarkable consistency of a family that stayed. That upbringing shaped her in ways she would not fully understand until much later. She became someone who valued reliability above almost everything else. Someone who reads stability as love and love as safety, and safety as the foundation on which every good thing in a life is built. She studied education at Ohio State, graduated in 2005, and spent the next 8 years working as a school counselor at an elementary school in a suburb of Columbus. Her colleagues described her as the kind of counselor children asked for by name, the kind who remembered which kid was going through a custody battle and which one had just lost a grandparent and which one needed an extra 5 minutes before going back to class. She had a gift for reading people, for sensing the thing beneath the thing, which is perhaps the most painful irony in everything that follows. She met Caleb Mercer at a mutual friend's wedding in the summer of 2013. He was 34, she was 31. He worked as a regional sales director for a mid-sized medical supply company headquartered in Indianapolis, which meant he was on the road frequently, sometimes 2 weeks out of every month, occasionally more. He was tall, unhurried, genuinely funny in a way that did not require an audience. On their second date, he asked her more questions about her work than any man she had ever gone out with. On their 4th date, he showed up to her apartment with groceries because she had mentioned offhandedly the week before that she was tired of eating takeout, he remembered. He acted on it without being asked. Diana told her best friend Renee afterward that she was not used to that. Renee, who had known Diana since college and had watched her navigate a string of relationships with men who were charming in the beginning and absent by the end, told her to pay attention. That a man who listened and followed through was worth paying attention to. Diana agreed. She paid attention. She fell in love. and 2 years later, in the spring of 2015, she married him. Renee Okafor stood beside her at that wedding. She was Diana's maid of honor, her oldest friend, the person Diana called first in every crisis and first in every joy. Renee was a physical therapist who ran her own practice, direct and unsentimental in the way that people who spend their days helping others heal tend to become, but fiercely loyal to the people she loved. She would later say that there were moments scattered across the years of Diana and Caleb's marriage when something felt slightly off, a story that did not quite match the previous version, a detail about a business trip that shifted slightly when it came up again months later. Nothing large enough to name, nothing she could point to and say with certainty this is wrong, just the faint, recurring sense that she was looking at a picture hanging almost level on the wall. Almost. She never said anything to Diana. She would carry the weight of that silence for a long time after the truth came out. Caleb and Diana had 2 children. Maya, their daughter, was born in 2017. Eli, their son, arrived 2 years later in 2019. When Eli was born, Diana made the decision to leave her job at the school. She framed it as temporary, just until the kids were older, just until the schedule made more sense, and Caleb supported it completely. He said all the right things. He told her that her instincts as a mother were extraordinary, and that no daycare in the world could offer their children what she could. He said they were a team. He said they would figure out the finances together. Diana believed him because everything he had shown her up to that point had earned her belief. She stepped back from her career. She poured herself into her children and her home and the life she and Caleb were building together. She told herself the temporary would eventually become permanent in reverse, that she would go back, that the window had not closed. She was still telling herself that in October of 2023. The month she found the card, it started, the way so many of these stories start, with something entirely ordinary. A Tuesday afternoon in mid-October, Diana had picked up Caleb's dry cleaning on her way back from dropping the kids at school. 3 suits, 2 dress shirts, and a charcoal gray overcoat that Caleb had left at the cleaners before his last trip. She was hanging the overcoat in the front closet when she felt the weight of something in the inside pocket. She reached in without thinking. A habit. She had found gas receipts in his pockets before, a forgotten parking stub, once a granola bar still in its wrapper. She was not looking for anything. She was not suspicious. She was a woman putting away her husband's coat on a Tuesday morning, doing the 1,000 unremarkable things that constitute a life shared with another person. And then she pulled out the card, the cartoon balloon, the 12 words in a child's handwriting. Happy birthday, Daddy, love Jackson and Brianna. She stood in the hallway. She read it twice. She counted 6 minutes before she could move. She put the card back in the pocket. She hung the coat in the closet. She closed the closet door. And she did not say a single word to Caleb when he came home that evening. She served dinner. She asked about his day. She listened to him talk about a difficult client in Cleveland and a flight delay out of O'Hare. She watched his face the entire time, and she felt, for the first time in 10 years, like she was watching a performance she had simply never recognized as one before. That night, after Caleb fell asleep, Diana lay in the dark with her eyes open, and she let herself think clearly for the first time since that hallway. Maya and Eli were her children. She knew their handwriting. She knew every drawing they had ever made, every birthday card they had colored with too much purple, because Maya loved purple, and Eli followed his sister in everything. The handwriting in the card did not belong to either of them. The names Jackson and Brianna did not belong to anyone in her family. They did not belong to any child. She knew she was not jumping to conclusions. She was a woman trained to read the thing beneath the thing, and what was beneath this was not complicated. It was devastating, but it was not complicated. She did not sleep that night. She spent the hours doing what she would continue to do over the next several weeks with a methodical patience that would later astonish even her, attorney. She began to pay attention differently. Over the following 3 weeks, Diana built a picture piece by piece. She noted the exact times Caleb's calls went to voicemail during his trips, not the occasional missed call, but the pattern of them, clustered in the evenings, consistent across months of phone records she pulled from their shared carrier account. She noticed that he had, sometime in the past 2 years, shifted to paying cash for certain things he used to put on their joint credit card. Dinners, parking, occasionally gas. Small amounts individually, but when she added them up across the statements she pulled from their filing cabinet one afternoon, while he was at the gym, the cumulative picture was of a man systematically reducing his traceable footprint. She found the second phone on a Wednesday evening in early November. It was in the glove compartment of his car, tucked beneath the owner's manual. A prepaid smartphone. She photographed it without turning it on. She put the manual back exactly as it had been. She walked back inside the house, poured herself a glass of water, stood at the kitchen sink for a long moment looking out at the backyard where Eli's bicycle was lying on its side on the grass, and she made a decision. She was not going to confront Caleb, not yet. Not until she knew exactly what she was confronting. She called Renee the next morning. She told her everything, the card, the pattern in the phone records, the cash purchases, the second phone. Renee, to her credit, did not panic. She did not tell Diana she was overreacting or suggest there might be an innocent explanation. She said, "Before you say a single word to him, you need to know exactly what you are dealing with." And then she said something else, something Diana would remember for years. She said, "You are the smartest person I know when you are not letting someone else's feelings be more important than your own safety. Pay attention to yourself right now." Diana wrote that down. She started a notebook that evening. She wrote down everything she had noticed, everything she had documented, every date and time and detail. She titled the first page simply, "What I Know." Underneath it, as an act of pure self-preservation, she opened a private email account using a laptop at the public library 3 miles from her house. She was not yet certain where this was going, but she had stopped pretending she did not know that it was going somewhere. The area code on the second phone's outgoing calls, which she accessed through a brief, careful examination of the device one afternoon when Caleb was at a school pickup, traced to a suburb outside of Memphis, Tennessee, Germantown. Diana looked it up. She had never been to Memphis. She had never known anyone in Memphis. But Caleb traveled there. She went back through the records 4 times in the past year, sometimes for 2 nights, once for 4. Always during the weeks when Maya and Eli had school events that Caleb was sorry to miss, but work was work, and he would make it up to them on the weekend. She sat with that information for a long time, and then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, while the kids were watching a movie in the living room, she opened Facebook on her phone and typed the area code city into the search bar along with the name she had seen attached to one of the recent texts, a single name, just a first name glimpsed in a notification before the screen went dark, Simone. The profile that came back was mostly private. Locked down the way people lock things down when they share their life with someone and want to keep it between them. But the cover photo was public. It always is on Facebook. The cover photo was a family portrait, outdoor setting, warm golden light, the kind of photo you pay a photographer to take in the fall when the leaves are turning and everyone is wearing coordinating neutrals. A woman in her late 30s, pretty natural hair, relaxed smile, the smile of someone who feels secure in where she is standing. 2 children in front of her, a boy who looked about 7, grinning with a gap in his front teeth. A girl, younger, maybe 5, squinting slightly into the sun, and behind them with his arm around the woman's shoulders, looking directly at the camera with the same easy, unhurried expression Diana had fallen in love with at a wedding in 2013, was Caleb. Diana stared at that photograph for a long time. She did not cry. She would describe this moment later in precise terms. She said it felt like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees and stayed there. She said she felt very calm in a way that had nothing peaceful in it whatsoever. She closed the app. She put her face down on the kitchen table. She went into the living room, sat down next to Eli on the couch, and watched the last 20 minutes of the movie with her children. She did not move. She barely blinked. She was somewhere else entirely. The following Monday morning, Diana Mercer called a family law investigator named Lori Vance. She had found Lori's name through a referral from a divorce attorney she had quietly contacted the previous week, not to file anything, just to understand what her options were and what evidence she would need. Lori Vance had been doing this work for 20 years, mostly in the greater Cincinnati area, but with contacts and resources across the Midwest and the South. She was known among the attorneys who referred clients to her for being thorough to the point of exhaustion, and for never once telling a client what she thought they wanted to hear. She was also known for understanding, in a way that not every investigator did, that the women who came to her were not just gathering evidence, they were in the process of having their entire reality restructured, and they needed someone who would tell them the truth without adding to the devastation. Diana sat across from Lori in a coffee shop near the library and laid out everything she had. Lori listened without interrupting. When Diana finished, Lori looked at her for a moment and then said, "I can confirm what you have found and build on it, but I need you to understand that what we are likely to uncover is going to be significantly worse than what you already know. Are you prepared for that?" Diana said yes. She had already decided that knowing was better than not knowing, no matter what the knowing cost her. Over the next 6 weeks, Lori Vance built a file that Diana's attorney would later describe as among the most thorough documentation she had seen in a decade of family law practice. What it showed was this: Caleb Mercer had been in a sustained, committed relationship with a woman named Simone Tate for 8 years. He had met her at a professional conference in Nashville in the fall of 2015, 4 months after his wedding to Diana. Simone Tate was 38 years old, lived in Germantown, Tennessee, worked as a dental hygienist, and had, by every measurable indication, believed herself to be in a monogamous relationship with a single man. Caleb had told Simone that he was divorced, that his first marriage had ended before they met, that it had been brief, that there were no children from it, and that it was not something he liked to talk about. Simone had accepted this. She had no reason not to. Their son Jackson was 7 years old. Their daughter Brianna was 5. Both children called Caleb their father and had been told, in age-appropriate terms, that Daddy's job meant he had to travel a lot, but that he loved them and would always come back. Simone had been patient. She had been waiting as she confided to a friend whose communications Lori was able to review with appropriate authorization for Caleb to be ready to take the next step, to propose, to make things official. She believed that day was coming. She had believed it for years. Lori's investigation also uncovered the financial architecture of what Caleb had built. Over the course of the marriage, he had been transferring money out of the joint account in increments small enough never to trigger concern. Amounts between $200 and $400 at a time moved to a secondary account that Diana had never known existed, which Simone had access to for household expenses. The transfers went back 7 years. The total when Lori's accountant contact added it up was $61,400 and some dollars. Diana received that number on a Tuesday afternoon sitting in her car in a parking lot outside a grocery store. She had Eli's soccer gear in the back seat. She sat with the number for a few minutes. Then she went into the grocery store and bought everything on her list because her children needed to eat dinner. She was that kind of woman. She was the kind of woman who absorbed catastrophic information in parking lots and then went and bought chicken and rice and called nobody until the kids were in bed. Renee said later that Diana's composure during those weeks was one of the most remarkable things she had ever witnessed. She also said she was worried about it. She made Diana promise to fall apart at some point when it was safe to do so. Diana said she would. She said she just needed a little more time. There was a moment somewhere in the middle of those 6 weeks when Diana found herself wondering about Simone. Not with hatred. She was surprised to find there was very little hatred, though there was plenty of pain, but with a kind of complicated, reluctant curiosity. She asked Lori directly, "Did Simone know about me?" Lori said that based on everything she had reviewed, no. She said the evidence was consistent with a woman who had been deliberately deceived in the same way Diana had, just from a different direction. Diana sat with that for a long time. The instinct she had initially felt, to see Simone as a villain, to make the story simple by casting the other woman as a knowing participant, dissolved slowly over those weeks, as the documentation made clear that there were not one but 2 women who had trusted Caleb Mercer completely, and only one person in this story who had chosen deception. Diana was not ready to feel anything kind toward Simone, but she was no longer able to feel anything uncomplicated toward her either. Her attorney advised her not to confront Caleb before the legal filings were in order. Every conversation before the papers were served was a potential opportunity for Caleb to move assets, change accounts, or alter behavior in ways that would complicate the divorce proceedings. Diana understood this. She agreed to wait, but waiting had a cost. Caleb came home on a Friday evening 2 weeks before the filing date and sat down at the dinner table and asked her, over pasta, why she had seemed distant lately. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. He looked directly at her. He asked if everything was all right, if she was sleeping okay, if there was something on her mind. Diana looked back at him. She said, "I am just tired." And she held his gaze while she said it, and she did not flinch, and she did not look away, and she thought 10 more days. The divorce papers were filed on a Monday morning in February of 2024. Caleb Mercer was served at his office at 11:47 in the morning by a process server who found him in a meeting with a client. He stepped out of the room and accepted the envelope and stood in the hallway of his office building reading the first page. His assistant would later tell someone who would eventually tell someone else that he stood there for a very long time before going back inside. He called Diana 17 times between noon and 2 in the afternoon. She did not answer any of them. When his calls went to voicemail, he did not leave messages on the first 12. On the 13th, he said her name and then was quiet for several seconds and then hung up. Diana saw the notifications stacking up on her phone while she was sitting in Renee's kitchen watching Maya and Eli eat grilled cheese sandwiches. She had taken the children there that morning before the papers were served. She had told them they were having a sleepover at Auntie Renee's while Daddy and Mommy dealt with some grown-up things at home. Maya had asked if everything was okay. Diana had said it will be, and she had meant it. She was already living inside a future she had spent 6 weeks quietly building, piece by piece, the way she had once built everything else in her life. With patience, with precision, and with the absolute refusal to be undone. Caleb arrived at the house that evening. Diana was not there. The children were not there. The house was quiet in the particular way that houses go quiet when the people who fill them are simply gone. He walked through the rooms and into the kitchen, and on the kitchen table there was a single white envelope. Inside it he found two things. The first was a printed photograph, the cover photo from Simone Tate's Facebook page, the family portrait, the golden light, the children squinting into the fall sun. Him with his arm around a woman his wife had never met, smiling the smile she had believed for 10 years was only for her. The second item in the envelope was a handwritten note on a piece of lined paper. 3 words, "I know everything." No signature. She had not needed one. Caleb called his attorney that night. The official response, delivered through legal channels 3 days later, was that the second relationship had been primarily emotional in nature, that physical contact had been minimal, and that Caleb had been in the process of ending it when the filing occurred. This position lasted approximately 72 hours before Lori Vance's documentation was introduced into the proceedings. The airline records, the phone logs spanning 8 years, the financial transfers totaling $61,000, the lease on the apartment in Germantown that Caleb had co-signed under Simone's name 18 months earlier, the family portrait taken by a professional photographer in October of 2023. The same month, Diana found the birthday card, which Caleb had paid for. The position of minimal emotional involvement did not survive contact with that file, and then came the second revelation, the one that shifted the entire story in a direction no one had quite anticipated. Simone Tate found out about Diana, not from Caleb, not from any attorney, from a woman she knew peripherally through a professional network, someone who happened to see the divorce filing appear in public court records and recognized Caleb's name, a name Simone had mentioned before, and sent Simone a message asking carefully if everything was all right. Simone did not understand the question at first. Then she searched the court records herself. She found the filing. She found Diana's name. She found the address of the marital home in Ohio, a home she had not known existed, belonging to a wife she had not known existed, in a marriage that had been in place the entire time Caleb had been telling her he was a single, divorced man who was not yet ready but was getting there. Simone called Caleb from Tennessee. The call lasted 4 minutes. She said things she would not repeat to anyone afterward. He said things that were, by every account, inadequate to the moment. There were 2 women now in 2 different states who had trusted the same man with everything and been repaid in the same currency, a lie so complete and so sustained that it had required daily effort to maintain, daily choices to perpetuate, years and years of decisions to keep building something false on top of something real. Diana found out about Simone's discovery through her attorney, who had been in contact with Simone's newly retained counsel. She sat with that information for a while. She thought about a woman in Tennessee, a woman with 2 young children and a job and a life she had built around a future with a man who did not exist in the form she believed he did. She did not feel triumphant. She had never wanted this to be a story with a villain and a victim and a winner. She had wanted, if she was honest, a life that did not require an investigation to understand. She had wanted Tuesday mornings without birthday cards in coat pockets. She had wanted the ordinary life she had believed she was living. That wanting had not changed. It had just become something she was going to have to carry forward into a different future than the one she had planned. The deposition took place in March. Diana sat at a conference table across from Caleb's attorney and answered questions for 2 hours with a steadiness that her own attorney said afterward she had rarely seen from a client in a contested divorce. Near the end of the session, Caleb's attorney asked her how she had managed to conduct herself throughout the investigation without confronting her husband, without giving any indication that she knew what she knew for nearly 3 months. Diana paused for a moment before answering. She said, "I kept thinking about my kids, about what kind of woman I wanted them to see their mother be. I did not want them to watch me come apart. I wanted them to see me stand up." The room was quiet for a moment after that. The divorce was finalized in January of 2025, 11 months after the filing. In that time, Diana had moved through grief the way people move through any overwhelming terrain, not cleanly, not on a schedule, not without falling down, but consistently forward. She had cried eventually, the way Renee had asked her to. She had cried in Renee's car in a parking lot after one of the early attorney meetings, and then again late one night after the kids were asleep, and once sitting in her own bathtub with the water running so that no one would hear her. She had also laughed, which surprised her, laughed at absurd things, at the sheer scale of the logistics Caleb must have maintained, at the fact that she, a woman professionally trained to read subtext in children, had been outwitted by a man who bought birthday cards and then left them in the wrong coat, She was not proud of the laughter, but she was also not ashamed of it. The human mind does what it needs to do to survive. The settlement gave Diana the marital home, primary custody of Maya and Eli, and a financial judgment that included restitution for the $61,000 redirected over 7 years to Simone's account. Her attorney had argued successfully that those funds represented a fraudulent diversion of marital assets. Caleb did not contest the custody arrangement. His attorney had advised him accurately that contesting it would not serve him well in front of a judge who had read Lori Vance's documentation. He agreed to visitation on a schedule that Diana's attorney had drafted. He signed where he was asked to sign. He was not, at the end of it, a man who had any leverage left to exercise. Now here is the part of this story that almost no one who hears it sees coming. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Diana received a letter. It came through her attorney's office, forwarded from the office of Simone Tate's attorney in Tennessee. Diana's attorney called ahead to let her know it was coming and to tell her she was under no obligation to read it or respond to it. Diana said she would read it. She sat down with it one evening after the kids were in bed, a cup of tea going cold on the table beside her, and she read it twice. It was 2 pages, handwritten. Simone wrote that she was sorry. Not in the reflexive, liability-conscious way that people sometimes apologize. She was sorry in the specific, detailed way of a person who had spent months sitting with exactly what had happened and exactly what her part in it had and had not been. She wrote that she had believed everything Caleb told her. She wrote that she understood Diana had no reason to believe that, and she was not asking Diana to feel anything she did not feel. She wrote that she had 2 children who were going to grow up without the father they had believed they had, and that she knew Diana's children were living that same reality, and that there was something in that parallel loss that she had not been able to stop thinking about. She did not ask for anything. She did not make any requests. She closed the letter by writing that she hoped Diana and her children were going to be all right, and she meant it in the plainest, most uncomplicated sense of the words. Diana sat with that letter for 3 weeks. She read it several more times. She talked to Renee about it. She talked to her therapist about it. She had started seeing a therapist in April of the previous year, which she described as among the better decisions she had made in the entire sequence of events. Her therapist did not tell her what to do. She asked Diana what she wanted. Diana said she wanted to not carry something that did not belong to her. She said she had spent enough energy on Caleb Mercer's choices. She did not want to spend more of it on anger toward a woman who had made none of those choices. On a Thursday evening in late February of 2025, Diana sat down and wrote 2 sentences on a piece of stationery. She wrote, "I believe you. I am sorry this happened to you too." She sealed it, gave it to her attorney to forward, and did not hear from Simone again. They have never met in person. Diana does not expect that they will, but she said to Renee afterward that writing those 2 sentences was the moment she felt the weight of the previous 16 months finally begin to lift, not because they resolved anything, not because they erased what had happened, but because they were the truest thing she could say, and saying the truest thing she had learned was the only reliable way out of the dark. Caleb Mercer lost both relationships in the same month. He lost his home, he lost the daily life with his children, he lost the financial stability he had built in no small part by redirecting money that was not entirely his. He relocated to another state before the year was out. His children, Maya and Eli in Ohio, Jackson and Brianna in Tennessee, are growing up now with fathers who are present some of the time and absent most of it, making sense of a man who had the love of 2 families and chose instead to lie to both of them. The children will carry questions that Caleb created and will have to answer for himself on their schedule in their time as they grow into people who deserve honesty. That is not a small thing to have done to 4 children. It is in some ways the largest thing in this entire story. Diana Mercer is rebuilding. She returned to school counseling part-time in the fall of 2024 at an elementary school 12 minutes from her house. She said it felt like coming back to herself. Renee said it looked like it too. What does a story like this say about trust? About the particular vulnerability of loving someone for a decade, of organizing your life around their presence, of becoming so accustomed to a person that you stop questioning what you see because the seeing has become as automatic as breathing. Diana was not naive. She was not inattentive. She was a woman with a professional gift for reading people who was betrayed by the one person she had decided, rationally and deliberately, not to read that way. Because that is what you do when you love someone. You extend the grace of not examining them constantly. You allow them the benefit of the doubt as an act of love. Caleb Mercer used that grace the way a man uses a door that has been left open for him. He walked through it every day for nearly 10 years, and when it finally closed, it was Diana who closed it. On her terms, with documentation, with precision. with two children watching from Renee's kitchen, eating grilled cheese sandwiches, waiting for the grown-up things to be sorted out. They are going to be fine. Their mother made sure of it. If you received Simone's letter, if 2 weeks after the end of the hardest year of your life a woman you had every reason to resent reached out with nothing but honesty and sorrow, would you have responded the way Diana did? Or would you have let the letter sit in a drawer somewhere unanswered because some things are simply too much to be asked to carry? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. Stories like Diana's do not live only in courtrooms and legal filings. They live in the ordinary moments that preceded the discovery, in Tuesday mornings and coat pockets and birthday cards from children whose names you do not recognize. They live in the 6 minutes a woman stands in her hallway counting her breath before she decides who she is going to be on the other side of knowing. Across this country, women are navigating betrayals of this scale every single day. Some of them are in the middle of it right now. Some of them are in the beginning, in that first strange quiet when something is wrong but you cannot yet name it. Some of them are years out, still building, still carrying, still deciding what to do with the letter in the drawer. If you are one of those women, or if you love one of those women, I hope this story offered something useful. Not comfort exactly. Comfort can be dishonest about how hard these things are, but clarity. The kind Diana found in a notebook she titled What I Know, in a parking lot outside a grocery store with soccer gear in the back seat. In 2 sentences, she wrote on a piece of stationery that said everything that needed to be said and nothing that did not. Before we dive deeper into our next story, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Your city, your state, wherever you are joining us from today. We read every single comment and we love knowing who is in this community with us. And if you are not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because next time, we are following a woman who discovered that her husband had not just been living a double life but an entirely different identity, different name, different history, different past, and she found out because of something as small as a library card. Same pattern, different details, and somehow, impossibly, even stranger, you do not want to miss that one. We will see you then.